They told me the sun was a gift. They lied. In the kingdom of Horus, the sun is a furnace and I am its favorite fuel. My name is Kalen and I can pull the heat from the air until your lungs freeze, only to vent it back as a localized supernova. But today, I'm not a hero. I'm a man looking at a woman who shouldn't exist, standing on a bridge that connects us to our greatest enemy. The sky above Horus is never blue. It's a bruised purple, choked by the volcanic plumes of the iron spires. I stood on the obsidian walkway, my boots crunching on layers of soot that had settled like snow. To my left, the high priest Malachor watched me with eyes that looked like cooling embers. "She is the catalyst, Kalen," he whispered. "Without Lyra, the sun will simply go out." I looked at Lyra. She was strapped to a ritual chair of white bone. Her skin didn't look human. It glowed with a soft, bioluminescent pulse, like a heartbeat underwater. She wasn't from Horus. She wasn't from the Shadow Kingdom of Umbra either. She was something else, the last of the ethereals, and both kings wanted her heart.
Kalen, behold the great rift.
I see it, Malachor.
Its power will be Afajas. Raise the flames.
The Umbran shadows are moving, Malachor warned, pointing his gnarled staff toward the great rift. Far below the floating islands of Horus, the rift was a sea of absolute black. Nothing lives there, except for them. I felt the temperature drop. My ability reacted instinctively. My skin began to glow a dull, cherry red as I absorbed the ambient heat to keep myself from shivering. A single figure was ascending the rift. He wasn't flying. He was stepping on platforms of solidified shadow that manifested beneath his feet with every stride. This was Silas, my counterpart, my curse. In Umbra, he is the Prince of Stillness. He doesn't create cold. He removes movement at a molecular level. The air around the bridge began to crystallize. Not into ice, but into a strange, dark glass. Silas reached the edge of our plateau, his silver hair whipping in the updraft. "Step
The
back,
fire in your
Kalen,"
veins will be your
Silas said.
undoing, Kalen.
His voice was
Surrender
like
to the
grinding
void,
stones,
or be
muffled by
consumed.
the void he carried with him. I felt the heat in my veins surge. "You know I can't do that, Silas. If she goes to Umbra, Horus freezes. Millions die. And if she stays here," Silas countered, taking a step forward, "Umbra is swallowed by the abyss. We are fighting for the right to breathe, brother. We weren't brothers by blood, but by burden. We were the only two who could survive the proximity of the ethereal energy Lyra radiated." The guards of Horus leveled their spears, long shafts of heated tungsten. They were terrified. They should be. Lyra looked at me. Her eyes were vast, swirling nebulae of gold and silver. "Don't let them do it," she whispered. "The price is too high."
Send them to the abyss. Charge forward.
Malachor screamed the command, "Kill the intruder. Protect the vessel." The soldiers charged. It was a massacre. Silas didn't even raise a hand. He simply stopped the kinetic energy of their hearts. They fell like statues, their faces frozen in expressions of mid-shout aggression. No blood, no sound, just the sudden absence of life. I lunged. I didn't use a weapon. I became the weapon. I slammed into Silas with the force of a falling meteor, my shoulder burning through his shadow cloak. We tumbled off the obsidian walkway, falling toward the clouds of ash. As we fell, we traded blows that would have leveled buildings. Each of my punches was a concentrated blast of thermal energy. Silas caught my fist. The heat died instantly. I felt the marrow in my bones turn to slush. I kicked off his chest, venting a massive flare from my feet to propel myself back toward the floating island. Silas didn't fall. He stayed suspended in the air, the shadows around him weaving into a gargantuan multi-limbed shape that blotted out the dim sun. "She is the key to the gate, Kalen. Your priests want to burn her to keep their lights on." My king wants to use her to close the abyss. I landed on the edge of the temple district, breathing hard. My skin was peeling from the intensity of my own power. Your king is a liar,
Your darkness
Silas.
will not prevail!
He wants the ether
Foolish
to forge
Caleb!
a weapon, not a
I
seal.
stand power!
The ground shook. A massive tremor from the core of the planet.
ethereal instability
The ethereal
accelerates!
pulse from Lyra was
Hold
accelerating.
fast!
Suddenly, the sky turned a vivid, sickly green. The clouds parted to reveal not the sun, but an eye the size of a continent. The horror of it paralyzed us both. The gods we served weren't kings. They were parasites. Lyra's voice echoed in my head and I saw Silas flinch. He heard it too. They are waking it up. The conflict is the friction it needs to feed.
In my mind, I hear you both.
Silas landed 10 feet from me. His shadow beast dissipated. He looked at the eye in the sky, then at me. Kalen, he said, his voice trembling, we are fighting the wrong war.
No. It can't be.
The eye in the sky didn't blink. It pulsed. Each pulse sent a wave of nausea through my soul, a reminder that we were nothing more than microbes on a dying beast. Silas and I stood amidst the carnage of the erosion guard. The great war between our kingdoms suddenly felt like a playground spat. Malachor, I roared, turning toward the ritual altar. The high priest was gone. Lyra was still there, but the bone chair was glowing with a terrifying rhythmic intensity. They've moved to the inner sanctum, Silas said, his eyes scanning the vibrations in the shadows. They're using the battle as a distraction to finalize the extraction. Extraction? I asked. I knew what it meant, but I didn't want to hear it.
No. It can't be. It is time.
This can't be real. Lyra's power awakens. It's unstable! We have to stop it! Kalen, the shadows gather. We must unite.
Unite after all this?
There is no other way, the Eye watches.
Kalen, this is
They
our
aren't
only
saving
chance.
Oris, Kalen.
We
They are
must act
harvesting
now.
Lyra's essence to ascend. They're leaving the planet behind. We ran. For the first time in 3 centuries, a warrior of Oris and a prince of Umbra ran side by side. The architecture of Oris was a nightmare of brutalist stone and brass pipes. We entered the great spire, the air thick with the smell of ozone and burning hair. A door of solid lead blocked our path. I didn't wait. I placed my hands on the metal and channeled every degree of heat I could muster. The lead didn't just melt, it vaporized. The backdraft nearly took my eyebrows off. Inside, the room was a sphere of polished glass. Malachor stood on a central dais, joined by a figure in tattered black robes, the Shadow Chancellor of Umbra. They were working together. The 2 kingdoms weren't at war. The leadership was in a coalition of survival.
The weave is loose today.
You're late, boys, Malachor said, not even looking up from the runes he was tracing in the air. Silas launched a spear of pure darkness. The Shadow Chancellor flicked a finger, and the spear dissolved into harmless smoke. You forget who taught you to walk in the dark, Silas? The Chancellor hissed. I tried to ignite the air around Malachor, but the room was vacuum sealed. No oxygen. No combustion. I gasped, my lungs burning. The ethereal doesn't belong to the world, Malachor explained calmly. She is the fuel for the Arkansas. We have spent centuries engineering this conflict to produce 2 beings, you two. I looked at Silas. He looked at me. We were engineered? Silas whispered. A battery of heat and a battery of cold.
Kalen, Silas, you stand before the Shadow Chancellor of Umbra. Your roles are but shadows in my grand design.
The Chancellor laughed.
You
To
think
stabilize
you
the
can stand
engine.
against me.
You aren't heroes. You're the spark plugs. Lyra screamed then. It wasn't a sound of pain, but a sound of unfolding. Her physical body was tearing apart, revealing a core of pure, blinding white light. The spire began to lift. Not just the building, the entire island of Oris was breaking apart, tethered to the spire by chains of energy. If you leave, the rest of the world dies. I shouted, trying to find a spark within myself. The world is already dead, Kalen, Malachar said. Look at the eye. It's hungry. We are just making sure we aren't on the menu. Silas moved. He didn't attack the priest. He attacked the floor. He sucked all the molecular motion out of the glass dais. The glass shattered like a frozen lake under a hammer. The ritual circle broke. The feedback was catastrophic. A wave of raw etheric energy slammed into us. I saw the history of the world in that flash. I saw the eye arriving eons ago. I saw it planting the seeds of magic to grow us like cattle. I saw Lyra's true face. She wasn't a girl. She was a containment unit built by the planet itself to trap the eye. By trying to save her, we were helping the priests unlock the cage. The Chancellor grabbed Silas by the throat, his hand turning into a void that began to consume Silas's arm. You were a masterpiece, Silas. It's a shame you have to be recycled. I charged, my skin turning into molten gold. I grabbed the Chancellor's head and let out a scream of thermal release. The Chancellor didn't burn. He turned into ash instantly, but as he died, he pulled me into his void. For a second, there was no light. No heat. No Silas. Just the eye looking down at me, laughing in a frequency that shattered my teeth. Then a hand caught mine. A hand made of light. Lyra. The twist is coming, Kalen, she whispered into my soul.
The world you know is fading.
The war was never about the woman. It was about the choice. I was back in the spire. The Chancellor was a pile of soot. Malachar was cowering behind the ethereal core. Silas was on his knees, his right arm missing from the elbow down, replaced by a flickering wisp of shadow. It's over, I said, the heat in my body now stable, controlled. I felt a strange calm. It's not over. Malachar shrieked. The eye, it's descending. If we don't launch the ark, we all burn. I looked up. The eye was no longer in the sky. It was the sky. The pupil was a black hole opening over the world. Lyra stood up. She was no longer bound. She was a pillar of radiance that hurt to look at. The eye is not a god, she said, her voice vibrating through the very stones. It is a scavenger, and it is here for its harvest. She looked at us. Kalen, Silas, you are the only ones who can reach it. My power is the bridge. Yours is the strike. We're just batteries, remember? Silas spat, struggling to stand. Batteries can be overloaded, I said, reaching out my hand to him. Silas looked at my hand, the hand of the man he had fought for centuries.
Come with me.
He took it with his shadow limb. The moment we touched, the world vanished. We weren't in Oris anymore. We were in the vacuum between worlds, standing on the surface of the eye itself. It felt like standing on a desert of wet, blinking meat. The ground under our feet was a colossal iris. Total entropy and total energy, Silas whispered. If we combine them...
We have to try.
The Big Bang, I finished. Or a very big funeral. The eye reacted. Tentacles of optic nerves, miles long, rose from the horizon to crush us. Silas became a dome of absolute stillness. The nerves hit the dome and simply stopped. They didn't break. They lost the ability to exist in time. Inside the dome, I was building the sun. I pulled every joule of energy from my past, from my kingdom's fires, from the very blood in my veins. I was no longer a man. I was a white dwarf star contained in a human shape. Now, Silas roared. He dropped the dome and funneled all his cold, his ability to stop atoms, into a single point. I pushed all my heat into that same point. The reaction wasn't an explosion. It was a cancellation. The eye didn't scream. It began to unravel. The organic matter turned into light, then into nothing. We were falling again. back through the atmosphere of our world. I saw Oris falling. The floating islands were losing their magic. They were crashing into the sea of the rift. I saw Umbra being washed in the first real sunlight it had seen in 1,000 years. We slammed into the ash fields of the borderlands. I crawled out of the crater. My powers were gone. I felt cold. A normal human cold. It was wonderful. Silas was lying nearby. His arm was back, but his hair had turned jet black. He looked at his hands and laughed. Lyra approached us. She looked human now. Just a woman in a simple white robe.
Kaelin, Silas. The path ahead is shadowed. We must move with unity and caution.
We are with you, Lyra.
You did it, she said. The scavenger is gone. The world is free to die naturally now. I looked at her, smiling. But then I noticed something. Lyra wasn't looking at the horizon. She was looking at us with that same continent-sized hunger. The eye was just the scout, she whispered, her pupils beginning to verticalize, just like the monsters in the old stories. I am the one who invited it. And now that you've cleared the competition? She stepped forward and the ground didn't burn, it vanished. We weren't the heroes. We were the ones who killed the only thing she was afraid of.